So I typically keep it at 50. You're welcome to increase it. It's up to you. The on feature, this tells the robot or the motor to turn on and stay on. Don't stop. Here's a fair warning. Your robot will not operate if you do not have a sensor after it. Okay, so let me explain why. If I were to tell you to go out onto I-15 and start walking and don't ever stop, just keep going, you probably would not do it because you don't want to just keep walking without stopping, because you're going to want to go to the bathroom, you're going to want to go eat, you're going to want to go to sleep. But this command is saying it doesn't matter what you want to do, keep walking. Okay, so the robot is the same way. It doesn't want to just keep going. It needs to know that there is a way out of this program or out of this block. So if you have it set to on and nothing after it, your robot will not function. If I set it to off, that is basically putting the brakes on the robot. It stops, but it doesn't stop the program. It just stops the current function. So let me just show you. If I set this to rotations and I want this to be set at 5 rotations, then these motors are going to run for 5 rotations and then stop. Please note up here, the B and C, this refers to the ports that my motors are plugged into on the robot. So if you look at my current robot, I have those plugs set to B and C. Okay, so this should work when I press play. I could set my next block and tell it to turn. I'm going to make it just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to make it turn right. I'm going to have it do 2 rotations. Okay. Then let's say I'm going to want to have a sensor. And I plug this in, I set it to on. As of right now, that program is not going to work. So I'm going to add a sensor. But I want to use my wait command. My first sensor that you guys are going to use will be a touch sensor, because in program number 1, you're going to have it touch a wall. So notice I did touch sensor. I want it to compare the state. State just means the condition of the sensor itself. So right now, if you notice up here, it is set to state number 1, and that little arrow is pointing in, which means this sensor will be triggered when the button is pressed. If I want to change that, I have it set at 0. That means that it will be triggered when the button is released. Well, if I am touching the wall and I'm still going into the wall, that button will not be released. So that will not work for our purposes. This means it's as long as your button is bumped in any way, it will be triggered. For our purposes, we're just going to have it be pressed. Okay? So right now, our program reads, both motors will run in rotations. They will go for 50% power straight ahead for 5 rotations, after which it'll make a hard turn at 50% power with the wheels going 2 rotations. Then it will move straight ahead and it will continue until the touch sensor is pressed. Now, down here in the lower right corner, this will kind of give you an indication as to what's happening with your program. So if I click on that, this tells me that I have these 3 sensors plugged in and these motors into B and C. I'm going to press play, which will run the program. This one is to download it to the brick on your robot. That is your brick. That is the controller. So I'm going to press play and then I'm going to hold the robot so you can see the wheels work. Notice they're rotating, turning, then it's going to keep going until that button is pressed and then it stops.